Hey, what's going on, traders? Decided to go a little old school today, doing a recap instead of the actual live trades because we were in a trade today that went a little bit longer than usual. So, with that said, we're just going to jump into these. MF was our first trade. This one was pretty nice. Not exactly my typical trade, but up until this point, which was 10:10 in the morning, we hadn't found anything that we liked. So, maybe a little stretched on what we typically look for as far as an extension away from previous resistance, but it did end up working out, and that ended up being our first trade of the day. Second trade was on PIK. PIK, this one a little frustrated because, again, not exactly the best. Previous resistance down here around the 67 area. Got a nice pop. It did come down to 72. We had our order sitting at 71. Didn't get filled. Popped right back up to high a day. It did come back down, though, to 73.5. I left my order at 71, figuring we could probably get that test on the reject there. But unfortunately, popped right back up and then made a pretty nice move all the way up towards 1. We did end up getting an ad pretty much near the top there. I never actually saw these 98 prints. I only saw where we were, which was around 94, 95. But yeah, here nor there. It did end up coming back down. Pretty decent trade here. Started with pretty small size and ended up making the most on any trade today. So ended up being pretty decent. PIK then led into RAD. So the rest of our trades today all happened after we got into RAD here. I don't necessarily hate this trade, but again, previous resistance, I guess you could use here. Looking back, pretty obvious curl. Gets a nice little pop up through 2. If we go to the daily, there was actually a really nice line here at 210. Support here, resistance here, support here again, resistance here, resistance here. It was just a perfect line sitting there at 210. Thought we'd get some nice respect there, jumped in. When it popped up through, came down, retested it, and then started to go. Probably should have just cut this. I only had a starter. Would have only lost like 10 bucks, I think, had I cut it here. But unfortunately, I didn't do that. It made a run up towards 220, got to add at 221. Again, started kind of small, wasn't that big of a deal. It started to come up, and we actually started running out of shares. So what I ended up doing was I started getting anxious on making sure we got a few shares with our average coming up. Felt like I put a top in here, 233, hit it on the way back down for another 100 at 225. And unfortunately, right after that, it went to 224 and then shot back up. Right here is where shares were running out. I literally hit this as I saw the last shares run out. I actually hit it for 300 shares. It only gave me 100 of them. So I don't know if it was good or not. I didn't go back and do the math to see if I would have hit my max loss up at the top here at 286. I don't think I would have. I was only down like $270, I think, at the top. So you add another 200 shares from 240. What's that? 20. That's another 160. Yeah, we wouldn't have been there. It would have been a lot closer, obviously, but we wouldn't have been there. Pretty frustrating trade overall. Ended up holding through it. Our average was 223. And of course, as it was coming down, it started to feel like it was trying to base here around this 230 area. Ended up taking some off, was right. Put another 100 up here over this 243. Literally came to the penny and got us at 244. Just figured if it wanted to curl back up in there without making a lower low first, it was going to probably try to continue at least up and try VWAP. Figured I'd take some off there just to minimize the loss. Unfortunately, that ended up being the exact top right before it actually came all the way down to our average and just straight up went sideways on our average. I was a little heartbroken by this because I didn't feel like there was anything to stop it there. I felt like it was going to go to this 210 area because of, like I showed you on the daily. I figured we were going to get a move down to there, and I was actually feeling real confident holding this 200 shares. It was still going to be a loss, but I had those out at 215, and I was really expecting to get those on this move down here. Unfortunately, it went sideways and touched our average at 223 3 times. So on the way back up, I just started using these previous pivot areas as stop for 100 shares. And when it went up there and kind of failed the same area, I was like, you know what? It tried to curl. It looks like it's failing again. I'm going to add those 100 shares back, looking for the breakdown towards 210. And I'm just going to put my stop over that area. So I'm not really risking much. I think it was like an extra $5 I put at risk there to try to get green on this trade. But
SLNA.
based out, made a higher low, and actually went up and went higher. It did continue a little bit higher, and then ultimately it broke our hearts even more after kind of curling a little bit and then just absolutely dumping, pretty much not dumping, but fading to that 210 area. So a little frustrating, and ended up doing what we were doing. It just emotionally, I think at this point we were done with the trade. Wasn't going to let these shares ride up against us, especially the way this looks. It looks like it could start curling. And then if you break this area here, it could be off to the races, especially because that's VWAP right through the $0.50. And who knows? I mean, we've seen things like this before where they curl, and then you get this same type of move that happened on the front side over here on the back side, back up towards the highs. So wasn't going to let that happen, especially because, again, we were out of shares. Never got the shares back, even throughout all the covering that was probably happening down here. So just a bit frustrating. After we did obviously go sideways here, I think we got like a couple thousand back, hence I was able to add these back. But throughout all of this on the way down to where my average was, there was no chance to add any shares, which was a little frustrating because I probably add these shares back here, looking for this exact move down, risking the top here, just like we did here. I would have been doing the same thing here. It's kind of one of my little backside strategies that I like to use, just previous pivot points after they're pretty obvious. Obviously being put in. So a little frustrated there. While we were in RAD, we did get a couple smaller trades. UP made a nice little spike. Previous resistance down here, 235. Was just looking for the $0.50 retest. I believe we actually had our order out at 251. Oh yeah, this is the one where I had 200 shares put out and it filled us 30. And it's very weird because I had my order out for 300 shares at 266. But look at the high. It says 269. So it says it went to 269. And again, like I was saying on the other one, it says the price went there, but I never saw it. On this one, I never saw the price go through 266, but it says it did. It happened so fast. But I only got filled 30 shares out of 300, and it says it went through my order, filled some at 269, and then didn't fill us the other 270 at 266. So a little bit frustrated there. And you can even see, look at the lots it gave me, 8, 20, 1, and 1 as far as the share size that it filled me. And supposedly it went through the order. It was a little frustrating. I do have that live. Maybe I'll go through and take a relook at that one. But I'm almost positive that was what happened. But I obviously it couldn't have went to 269, right? If I had my shares sitting out there on the ass the entire time, it should have filled them. Especially being on SSR, those shares were obviously there to be filled. But it is what it is. The next one was JOAN. This one was actually a pretty decent trade. A little frustrated that I didn't maybe hold on to it for a little bit longer. Previous resistance that I was going off of was here, 123. Got a nice little pop up here. Got to start at 138 for 200 shares. Never really pulled back at that point. So when we went up through 150, I had my order out actually higher. I want to say like 166, 167. I ended up dragging that down when I realized it was kind of topping. It didn't seem to want to go any higher. Ended up being right there. Took some off here. And then down here is when RAD actually started to finally break down towards my average. And I was really just kind of looking to get out. These I took off because it dumped and started to come back up towards VWAP. These, I just put a stop over this previous candle. Actually ended up coming and getting us to the penny and then faded the rest of the day. So that was a little frustrating on those last, I think it was 50 shares. So let me just check real quick. Yeah, 50 shares. Literally to the T. You can see 139 or 138 was it? 130, yeah, 138 came up, and that was what our order was at. So a little frustrating. It was just that previous candles at 137. And then I believe we had one more trade on RAD. Oh yeah, lottery, LTRY. This was one that ran a little bit later. Started to go up, another penny stock. It started to feel like it was just another pump based off of all the other ones that were happening today. And so I was just going to quickly try to scalp this one. I only took 100 shares. I was really looking for it to come back down and retest 27. Clearly, it tried to go down through 39, like a bunch, and it was like really pressing. There was a big order there sitting at 39, and it went through, got to 38.28, and started to come back up. And I was like, no. So I actually I saw 39 on the ask again. I took it off, and literally almost right after that, this thing shot up through high of day. And as you can see, it's been kind of doing this crap ever since. So yeah, ended up green on the day, so I can be thankful. RAD could have very easily have been a very big loss. Again, this is one where I ran out of shares. I didn't want to just necessarily cut it just because we were out of shares. I wanted to see some sort of attempted pullback. Would I have max sauce if this thing went to me being down a max sauce? Yeah, I would have. It's unfortunate, but I wanted to see what it would do after it attempted at a pullback, which to me was right here. So on this candle here at 1210, we got down to 258. It shot all the way back up to 282. If this goes back high of day here, we're cutting it, right? This is what I consider an attempt at a pullback. And if this was all it was willing to give, this thing was obviously really strong, and it's probably going to keep going. And I'm pretty sure we would have been down like 270, 280, something like that in that area. So we ended up losing 55 on it. Can't complain, right? Not going to complain. Could have been out had we held the whole thing the entire way down. Could have made decent money on it, right? We had 400 shares at 223. Came down, could have made like 40 bucks on it instead of losing 55, right? I'm not going to complain. The fact that we only lost 55 on it instead of 280, that's just kind of rude, if you ask me, to the market gods. So that's all I got. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Always appreciate the support. If you do ever have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to leave those down in the comment section below, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.